What is going on, everyone? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 26, coming your way. My name's Meek. I got Wu next to me on my left.
Yep.
Wu, it's getting hot here in Rhode Island, huh?
Oh my God, it's about time.
Yeah.
Just like all the rain.
Yep.
Now it's nice and sunny. I'm here for it.
Rain's gone, right? We're going into, I think next Tuesday's 97 down here on the coast, and then inland Rhode Island's probably going to be in like the hundreds.
I mean, we got the best beaches in the country. It's about time we can start going to them.
Absolutely. Welcome in, everyone. For those of you who are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. 1,300 plus plays we have hit across all those platforms. You know, that's awesome to see. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials. Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube at Fourth and Fantasy. Whatever way you guys want to see it or hear it, you know, we will provide it for you. Please make sure you guys are leaving a like and a follow, you know, on those platforms, or, you know, leave also giving us a rating if you're listening on, you know, podcast services that you have right now. But Woo, I'm gonna open it up a little bit differently. Normally I give us a quick question of the day, but we had a recent TikTok that kind of blew up.
Nice.
So the question I asked for a lot of people who decided to comment, because we got 200 comments, was,
oh yeah,
I'm bored. Give me your hot take of 2025 fantasy football season. I'm not talking Lamar Jackson as the QB1. And we got some doozies. I'm going to read them off to you, and you tell me what you think.
Okay.
So first one, friend of the show, Goal Line Dynasty, said Brian Thomas Jr. outperforms every wide receiver not named Jamar Chase.
Whoa.
Spice.
Yeah,
I like that
spice.
one.
I don't hate it, though. I mean, we've talked about the Jaguars' offense. This is the year for it to turn up. They have all the pieces. They got a new coach. We saw what the Bucs did with Liam Cohen last year on offense. So, I mean, it's not that crazy. I mean, it's definitely spicy, but it's a range. It's in the range of outcomes.
Okay, I agree with that. I was gonna say, because we're talking about him beating out Jefferson, Lamb, St. Brown.
Sure.
Like, you know, I think we all believe in Brian Thomas Jr. about being that next up and coming, but like to take that step in year 2 would be kind of crazy to see.
The big thing is the touchdowns. There's a lot last year.
Oh yeah. Next one, we have friend of the show, first ballot of FB, Keon Coleman, top 20 wide receiver.
Out.
Yeah.
Nope.
You're out on that?
I'm out on that. No, I don't see that.
Listen, I asked for spice, and they brought the spice.
It's definitely spice.
And I appreciate that. Let's see if we got any good ones. Cam Scatterbu will be a top waiver wire pickup, or a pickup in week 4.
I could see that.
Kyle Williams has the best season of any rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, no.
We're talking better than Puka.
You must be from New England.
Rashad Bateman will have the most receiving yards on the Ravens.
I don't know.
Drake May, top 7 QB.
Ryan Floyd, you put that in there?
Doesn't that feel like that? Let's see. We'll give you one more good one. So this person, Ryan, commented Drake London as the wide receiver 3, Devon Achane as the running back 1.
Okay.
That one.
I like that one. I have some personal investments in those guys, so I'm here for that.
That one's a good one. I like that. So yep. So those are some hot takes that we had. We appreciate anyone. I'm sorry I couldn't read all of them, but we appreciate those who commented. Be on the lookout on our TikTok, because I'm sure I'll probably put some more things up there, and you never know, you might see yourself on the show.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna move into around the NFL really quick. Not a lot of news right now. I think off-season OTAs and mini camps are just wrapping up, and everyone's gearing for the start of training camp. It's kind of crazy to me that we're recording this right now on June 21st, and training camp is literally like 3 weeks away.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. Like, we're about to hit that lull, in the sports season where NHL's now done, NBA finals is going into a game 7, and then after that it's nothing. You know what I mean?
Shout out to all the baseball people.
Yeah, the baseball's still alive, and not a lot of us are baseball. But then it's middle of July hits, then it's football starting, and then training camp, and then preseason.
When's week 1?
Oh yeah. So with that being said, we don't have a lot of news. So all we have really is Chiefs. First one is Chiefs. Andy Reid says Rashee Rice will be ready for the start of training camp.
It's huge.
That is absolutely huge. He's someone who I personally have him on my Dynasty team, and I'm expecting him to, be fully healthy, stepping in and essentially being the number one target in Kansas City. I think him being on the field, they're going to be a little bit more dynamic. I'm not going to say explosive as they were with like the Tyreek Hill years, but they're definitely going to be dynamic enough to put up some more points, because I think he's a lot more. He's younger than Kelsey, and I think he's got more juice to him, where they both command the same area of the field, like the shallow curls and right across the middle and things like that. And I think Patrick Mahomes, if he utilizes Rashee Rice in that way, I think could have a monster fantasy season.
I know it's a small sample size, but his first 3 weeks last year before he got hurt, those target numbers, if that can be anywhere close to that for a full season, I think he's a top 12 guy, like no questions asked.
Oh yeah, and right now he's going at the 406 right now. So like, and that's not a bad
Imagine
wide
him being
receiver
your
too.
I was just gonna say, imagine him as your wide receiver too. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to have that. So, and obviously the caveat to all of this with Rashee Rice is you still have to worry about the legal situation and see kind of how that plays itself out. But I recently, from what I'm hearing, I hear that like nothing's gonna happen this current year.
That's what I keep hearing too, and it's so confusing because I thought that was the thing last year.
Right.
It's like it wasn't going to happen last year, but then it's going to be this year, and I don't know. I'm no lawyer. I don't know.
Exactly. I actually didn't put this piece of news in our docket, but I will put it in now. I believe trial starts for Jordan Addison in next week, 2 weeks. For those of you who don't know, last offseason, Jordan Addison was cited for speeding. I believe he was like in the 101 range. I don't know what it is with NFL players and speeding. We got another one coming up, but
it's leaking out of Georgia.
So what I'm hearing from this one is with Jordan Addison is that he's actually going to have a suspension, because the NFL policy at the minimum for something like this is a 3-game suspension. And it kind of, when you look at the Vikings schedule, it kind of works out, because the first 3 games are in America, and then they're like back-to-back weeks in London. So it would work where he rejoins the team in Europe week 4 and week 5, play those games, and then play the rest of the season. So obviously, with that being said, you have to adjust your rankings, you know what I mean, for Jordan Addison right now in a redraft dynasty. It's not that big of a deal. Obviously you won't have him for the first 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But for a redraft, he's almost
that's a realistic wide receiver too. Yeah. So
yeah,
you have
you know
to
what I mean?
You have to think twice about that.
So I mean, if I'm someone who's when it comes to draft season, I'm pushing Jordan Addison like way, way down. Like he might be, if he's still there in like the last round or two, like then I might take the stab at him, but I'm not taking him right now at his current ADP, which I will give you in a couple of seconds. But the other thing with Jordan Addison too is like I had high hopes for him, this year, just because, he's he's only played for two seasons, but he's had double-digit or almost double-digit back-to-back years of his career. So right now he is going at the 606. So obviously you're not going to take him there.
No.
But like, just kind of be aware and listen out for kind of what the news is going to be. It's not a definite, that he's getting suspended. That's just kind of what I've been hearing on Twitter and things like that. Until it's official, then, we would, change your rankings and things like that.
Yeah, it's especially important for redraft, because if you get too far behind early on in the year,
oh my God,
it's very tough to come back.
It craters you.
Yeah, so you got to really think, even though I love the talent, like if he's going to miss 3 weeks, like that could screw you that first 3 weeks.
Yeah. And it's so important to start well, or even just
stay afloat.
Stay afloat in the first month of the year. Like if you start the year 0-4, it's like it feels just like it's an impossible uphill battle to make it to the playoffs. But like if you can make the adjustments in the draft and not go for these landmines, and you're like 3-1, 4-0, and put yourself in a good position, that's great to see.
Sure.
Speaking of speeding again, Browns quarterback Shedeur Sanders is cited for speeding. He clocked in at 101 miles per hour. Did you see the video that went with this?
No, but I know it happened twice.
Oh, I didn't know it happened twice.
Yeah, it's twice in the last month, I think.
So I saw basically it was like the body cam footage of like an Ohio police officer, whoever pulled him over, and like it just sounded like it was such a hot mess. Like, first of all, it didn't roll down the window. Then he's got a Colorado truck with a Mississippi driver's license. Like, it was just such a hot mess. So I know a lot of us were excited for Shedeur and him potentially taking the the QB1 spot. I don't know how this affects him this year. Maybe this is a situation with like Rice and Addison where it all gets pushed back to next year. But even still, it's something to pay attention to, because he can't you think about like all of the buzz around him, all the eyes, and then he turns around and does something like this. And I get it, like, he's like 23 years old, like, we all make mistakes, but like, you're in a certain situation right now, Shedeur, that like you can't afford
There's
like
no
these
room for
mistakes.
error.
You can't make these errors.
You already saw the draft slide. Like, there's no room for error. And I think I would care a little bit more about this news if I actually thought he was up in the race in the QB1 to be the QB1 for that team. I mean, It's still early, so he still could. But yeah, he has very little room for error, and this is just something you got to stay away from.
Right. Just being a fifth round, like, he's probably the most scrutinized fifth round pick that we'll ever.
Because there's really nothing. There's nothing that Cleveland has to hold on to him for.
No.
Like, there's no draft capital that backs him up. It's not like he was their first round pick or anything like that. So they could say tomorrow, like, all right, see ya, go figure it out.
Right. So we'll see how.
Like, we were the ones
out.
who actually wanted you, and then you're gonna go ahead and do this. Like,
yeah, I don't know, man. Last one. This one's a personal plug, but just want to put it on everyone's radar. So receive some minicamp buzz over in Los Angeles with the Chargers. The player we are talking about is Oronde Gadsden II. Didn't realize this, but his father, Oronde Gadsden, was actually a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. But the whole buzz around Oronde Gadsden is, he was the tight end for the Los Angeles Chargers, a 5th round pick. But they've been giving him rave reviews. I guess, like, he rides his bike into the facility at 5 a.m. every day. Chargers tight end coach, who's actually a former Ravens and Raiders tight end coach, says he reminds him of Darren Waller.
it's high praise.
How does that hit you, Woody? Is that someone that you're interested in?
I mean, I love the rides his bike to the facility at 5 a.m. every day. No,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a football guy. I mean, that's the kind of attitude you want. Like, this is the because until you brought him up, I never heard of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, notes like that is like what you want to hear out of guys that are really fighting for a spot. Like, this is something that Shedeur should be doing. Like,
Yeah.
you are fighting for a spot here. Nothing is guaranteed for you. You should be doing everything in your power to stand out. So the coaching staff notices you.
Absolutely. And so Gadsden, 21 years old, 6'5", 236. He was actually he was from Syracuse. He was actually a wide receiver at Syracuse his junior year, and then I think had a season-ending injury. Sat the next year out, or maybe it was sophomore year. Sat his junior year out, came back his senior year and converted to a tight end. And then I think he was like top 3 in yards in all of FBS for tight ends.
I believe Kyle McCord is slinging it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's very raw, you know what I mean? Hasn't played a lot of tight end, but if there's someone that I'm going to trust, is someone who developed Darren Waller, as a coach.
I like that.
So if he's floating out in your waiver wires of your dynasty leagues, you might want to just
throw him on the taxi
squad and just see what happens. He may turn out to be nothing, and this was all a moot point, but he may turn out to be something. And then you heard it from us first.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna get into the main topic of the show. This one, Woo, this topic today, I think it's more of a laid back, like,
sure.
Sit back, unbutton the collar. We're talking dynasty trade targets, right? So the way I had this set up is each of us have 2 trade for targets and 2 trade away targets, but for each of those targets, we're going to be giving, some rationale as to why we think that this person is either a trade for or a trade away. We're also going to maybe mention what it might take to acquire this person, whether in terms of draft capital and things like that. And then lastly, just kind of give a realistic floor and a ceiling for these players as we kind of talk about them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna kick it off first. My first trade for target is gonna be Dak Prescott.
Love it.
So my rationale behind this is that when you look at the offseason moves for the Cowboys, they did not make meaningful moves in the running game, right? They signed Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. They draft Jaden Blue. Brian Schottenheimer, who's the head coach, has said in multiple press conferences that they want to establish the run and marry the running with the pass. And with those moves right there, I don't believe it for a second. You know what I mean? If anything, I believe that they're going to pass the ball even more because, they have to. And then they also traded for George Pickens. So you're going to tell me that we're going to run the ball more, but yet we picked mediocre players to be our running backs and then picked up George Pickens to be our wide receiver too, who is actually going to be a great wide receiver too. It's a total smokescreen. Those reasons right there, I think just the start is why you should invest in Dak Prescott, because the more opportunities he's going to get to throw the ball, the better off he's going to be. And then also to top it off, every year Dak has played a full season, he's a top 10 quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, Josh, I'm sure you're like losing your mind listening to this right now, that I'm supporting Dak Prescott, but I understand it. I get it. Like, you look at his early years, right, from 2016 to 2019, he was the quarterback 6, 10, 12, 2, right? Next year in 2020, that was the year he broke the ankle, and then comes back in 2021 and it was his QB 7. You know what I mean? Like, Dak is a good quarterback. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm going to sit here and say it. Dak's a good quarterback, and if he has George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson to throw the ball to, I think he's gonna do really well. And I just want to remind everybody, the last time we had a full healthy Dak was in 2023. He had 4,500 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and 9 picks. And that's
pretty good season.
I was gonna say he was the QB 3. So So if basically what I'm saying is, like, if you're going to get a healthy Dak for an entire year, you go out and you go and invest in him, right? So I'll kick it to you. So, like, how do you feel? Is that all, like, make sense? Or
I'm with all that, especially the idea of how they're saying that, they want to run the ball more, and the pieces that they added it doesn't back up that argument. Or that thought process. And for me, like, especially with Dak, this year, and a reason why I like him as a trade for target, and like when I get into mine, there's a common theme here is, like, so many people are doubting him, and the value for him is about as low as it's ever going to be. And I think you could easily acquire Dak Prescott for, pennies on the dollar.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think he's in the back of everybody's mind. He's not a name that, we had a great rookie quarterback class last year. We have some interesting names this year. I think everybody's kind of looking towards those names and thinking about the upside for those guys, and everyone's forgetting what Dak Prescott is capable of.
Yeah. So when I talked about, or now moving into, like, what it would take to acquire him, I put down here, like, if you're someone who was healthy at quarterback and you had some depth and you wanted to tier down, if you took someone like Herbert and traded, like, Dak for a 26 first or a 27 first, you get someone who's going to be crucial for your team that you can play every single week, but then also adding draft capital to then use that pick in another need of area. Maybe you need a running back or a wide receiver, or maybe you take another young quarterback and and bolster that depth that you have. So that was one option that I had, that would take to acquire Dak. Another one that I had was, maybe you probably could get Dak for, a second, and, someone like Anthony Richardson, like, if you were trying to, get rid of him and someone was interested in him, that may be worth it, or trading for someone like a second and Calvin Ridley to acquire Dak. Like, there's a lot of options where you can go for that situation.
I love the idea of taking, like, a younger, very promising quarterback like Herbert, especially if you're set at that position with two guys like that.
Yes.
And taking him out and taking on Dak and a first round pick. Like, I love that idea. I would do that right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so then just to round out Dak, my realistic floor and ceiling that I put, I think for a floor, I did say every year he's been healthy, he's been a top 10 QB. Obviously we can't assume he's going to play all 17 games, but I think a realistic floor for him is between QB 12 and QB 15. And in a dynasty league, if you can get a QB2 or even like your third quarterback to finish around that area, that's huge for your team to have someone reliable. And then, a ceiling I put was, the QB6. I said, here I put for my notes where obviously assuming health, but think of Baker Mayfield last year. You know what I mean? Like he just screams to me, someone like Baker where, he's reliable. He's gonna have the volume. That year in 2023 when he was fully healthy, he had like 600 passing attempts.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's huge. And then in redraft, you probably can't go wrong with him either. No. I was just checking his redraft ADP. He's going right now at the 1009.
That's usually the rounds I start thinking about quarterback anyways.
So who knows, maybe Dak Prescott might be someone that we invest in also in redraft leagues.
Oh yeah.
But so that's my first trade for candidate. Wu, why don't you give me your first trade for candidate?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Josh Jacobs here.
I love this one.
Yeah, so it honestly all comes from something I saw on X.com, the Everything app. It's all happening on X.
Oh, always.
I saw a couple stats there, so I'm gonna give this guy credit. But he's a workhorse back who he faces no competition touches wise. And it's a high-powered offense. The Packers are going to score points.
Mm-hmm.
So the stat that I saw, this comes from Joe Orico FF on Twitter. So weeks 5 through 15 last year, there was one running back better on a points per game basis than Josh Jacobs through those weeks, and it was Saquon Barkley. So Saquon over that time period was 21.1 points per game. Josh Jacobs was a measly 0.4 points behind at 20.7. So I mean that's pretty good company to be a part of, especially the year that we saw Saquon have.
Right.
Also for Jacobs, it was the second most attempts of his career last year with the Packers, and I fully expect the Packers to use him in a very similar manner. I'd be shocked if they don't. So yeah, it's only the second time he's had 300 touches in a season. He was healthy all year, which is great, and he scored his first receiving touchdown. I still can't believe that was a real stat.
Feels like a dream.
Yeah, it's like, how does that even happen? All those crazy years in Vegas. But for me, it's the opportunities that he's going to see on a high-powered offense, on a team that's going to have games that matter late in the year. All of these factors that kind of play in. And I don't even have to speak to the talent we see on the field. Everybody knows how good Josh Jacobs is. So I think it's all those outside factors that play into this.
Yeah, I love the pick of Josh Jacobs. I think the key with that is the opportunity, right? One of the big things that you want to look at, especially like now, obviously this is dynasty trade targets, but I'm talking fantasy football in general, where when you're going into a season and you got you guys ready to go, you want to look at guys who are going to have potentially the most opportunity, right? And when you look at the depth chart around Green Bay, it's, obviously Josh Jacobs is your starter, then it's, Emmanuel Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd and nobody else.
And they've tried to work him in and it hasn't worked.
Correct. And that's the big thing with Matt LaFleur is that, he has always been a multiple running back by committee kind of coach. You think back to the years with like Aaron Jones and a healthy, AJ Dillon, Eddie Lacy, like all of those times. And now they, he's, like you said, tried to make it work. Marshawn Lloyd was hurt with a hamstring injury. Emmanuel Wilson really isn't like that guy to step up and take carries away from Jacobs. So I think that's a great play.
And because this is more dynasty focused, he's only 27. I think this year, next year, and the year after, you can still trade for him in dynasty and not be nervous of the age.
No, you still get a couple of years out of him. You know what I mean? And you look at his career finishes, like every year he's finished. I mean, outside of the last year he was in Las Vegas, which was a dumpster fire. He was the running back 27, but every other year he's been no lower than the running back 18. Yeah. So I think that's a great pick. So when it comes to trying to acquire Josh Jacobs, what do you think it's going to take to get him?
It's more than likely going to have to be a first round pick, and I think I'm comfortable with that. I was trying to find a scenario where maybe you could give a young player, like a young running back, maybe like RJ Harvey, and maybe a second round pick. Maybe that does the job.
Okay.
Because to be honest, I'm way more confident in the 3 years I'll get at Josh Jacobs than the next 3 years at RJ Harvey. I have no idea what we're getting out of him. That's kind of my mindset there. It's more than likely going to have to be a first round pick. I wouldn't go any more than one first round pick. Like I wouldn't give two. If you can throw in like a young receiver too, if the first round pick isn't going to do it by itself, maybe like let's see here, maybe like a first in like Trey Harris for Josh Jacobs. Kind of given whenever you're going for vets, you're under the assumption that that team is in a rebuilding period. They're trying to acquire
trying to
assets.
get younger.
So that's where, yeah, exactly. So you're trying to get younger. So that's when you kind of want to throw these younger guys out, with these picks, to try and get this job done. For me, like if I'm sitting on a team and I'm a piece away, I feel like Josh Jacobs could be that piece to get me a championship.
Oh yeah. So I was just scouring Keep Trade Cuts database for some trades. I want to throw a couple at you and tell me how you feel about it. So This one is Josh Jacobs for Chris Olave and a third.
I would do that for Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs for a 2026 first round pick in Trevor Etienne, not Travis, Trevor.
Yeah, I would do that.
A 2026 first round pick in Josh Jacobs for Bucky Irving and a 27 third.
So you get Josh Jacobs in a first?
You get Josh Jacobs in a first for
that.
trading Bucky.
Give me that.
Yeah. And then the last one I have for you is Josh Jacobs. You trade for Josh Jacobs and you're trading away Chase Brown, a 26 third and a 26 fourth.
I mean, I don't hate Chase Brown. It's the extra picks. They are late though, third and fourth. I think I'm still going Josh Jacobs there.
Okay, nice. I like that. And then just to round them out, what's a realistic floor and ceiling that you have for Josh Jacobs?
To be honest, I think his floor is still a running back one. Like I think I can't see him finishing outside of the top 12. If he has a fully healthy season, the way they use him and the amount of touches he's going to get, I can't see him finishing outside the top 12.
The only way I think it doesn't work is if they have like a poor. I'm trying to look it up right now.
Just a terrible offensive year.
You're right. They have a terrible offensive year, and they have to throw to stay into games, which is not Green Bay's. Yeah, I was gonna say which is not like Green Bay's style. So I'm looking. Obviously outside of Detroit, Minnesota, and Chicago, they play the Commanders. Looks like they play the Cowboys, the Browns, Cardinals, Steelers. So a lot of these games I'm looking at, it doesn't look like it's a crazy complicated schedule, right. You know what I mean, or a tough schedule for them. So Josh Jacobs is awesome. So what's the ceiling you got for him?
So I have RB5 plus, probably mainly RB5.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to put him higher, but the receiving upside isn't there. And the guys at the top of that list are always going to have that receiving upside. I mean, he gets a little bit here and there, but like I said, like last year was his first receiving touchdown. So I think that's kind of the point right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying like I'll say RB5 is going to be about as high as he can get.
Yeah.
But I'll still take that.
No, absolutely.
Where he's being drafted.
That's all. That would be awesome to get him, which I think he's going right now at like the 210 is what I looked up.
I have the 212.
212. Yeah. So he's going at the end of the second round.
Yeah.
Beginning of the third round, and you're potentially getting a
RB5 upside.
An RB5 upside. Like, yeah, sign me up for that. My last trade for candidate is going to be Mr. Jonathan Taylor, running back for the Indianapolis Colts. And so obviously my rationale for this is, he's a great athlete and he's an exceptional talent. I didn't realize this until I looked him up. He averages 5 yards per carry his entire career so far.
Wow.
So like that just speaks to the elite talent that is Jonathan Taylor.
All you gotta do is give him the ball twice.
You know what I mean? Obviously he struggled. He struggled last year, because I feel like the Indianapolis Colts were, trying to find their identity.
It's a transition period.
And figure out kind of what they're going to be. I feel like they want to be a dynamic offense that throws the ball, a lot, but then, it didn't work because whether it was Richardson just poor play or being injured, we saw that they started to turn to him in, towards the end of the season. And that's what I just want to highlight is, his 2024 playoff run, he was in week 16 had 39 points, fantasy points. Week 17 had 27.6 fantasy points. And then in week 18, he had 25 fantasy points. He's only played a full season once, right? But every other year he has been a top at least 18 running back, so he's a tweener between a running back one, definitely a running back two. But I think if everything falls in the right scenario for him, he's someone who can be even better than that. This is the same guy that we talked about in the 2023 season. No, I would think it was 2022 season where he was the running back one overall. You know what I mean? Like that's still this guy. The other thing that's important to highlight, right, is, you've already heard in the news that Anthony Richardson is dealing with a shoulder injury. I know they say that he's going to be ready for training camp, but the fact that shoulder is already hurting and it's the throwing shoulder that he had surgery on, doesn't speak positives, for his long-term outlook this season, which means that they would turn to Daniel Jones. And I honestly think Daniel Jones is a more stable quarterback for this offense.
Shane Steichen has already come out and said how much he loves how he's playing right now.
Correct. And I think that right there will then turn this team into, we're not relying on Anthony Richardson to be talented and run with his legs. I know Daniel Jones can do that, but I think he's more of a systems quarterback, where then I think this team is going to turn into a more like, we're going to be a run-first team, and then predicate it off of play action and hit guys like Josh Downs and Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman. And I think those are all great things for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I think the one thing for Taylor we know is he is a workhorse back. He will get all the touches. There's not a big touches competition there. The big thing is he needs the quarterback play to be somewhat serviceable. Otherwise, they're just going to sell out, load up the box, and it's just going to make his job that much harder. He has the talent to still beat that out, beat out that game plan. But you don't want everybody selling out on John Taylor every single time he touches the ball.
Yeah, and he's going right now around like the 303, so he's going like after Josh Jacobs, right before Kyron Williams, and who knows, maybe with the news of Anthony Richardson and the uncertainty of the quarterback play, he may fall in ADP, and if he's fallen in ADP,
that's value right there.
That's value that I want to take. So some things what that it would take to acquire him that I put. I said, if you wanted to take two second round picks and see if you could acquire Jonathan Taylor, I feel like that would be a fair offer. Maybe a late 2026 first round pick. And then the last one I had, which is kind of interesting, is if you wanted to package a young rookie running back like Cam Scatterbo and a 26 second to acquire Jonathan Taylor, I think that would also be a fair offer.
I think Jonathan Taylor, like I've never, had him on a team, but I think managers at this point, I think I would be a little nervous on this Colts situation. And I think I would be interested in all three of these trades, all three of the ideas, taking a young running back and a 26 second or even the 2 second round picks. It's something I would have to consider. It would probably be difficult for me to actually do it. Mm-hmm. But specifically with what the Colts are dealing with right now and the major question marks at quarterback and what that offense is going to look like, and are they going to get serviceable quarterback play for 18 weeks? Like right. These are trades I would have to think about.
And I don't think they're going to get that serviceable quarterback play, which I think then forces their hand to have to play, to give Jonathan Taylor more touches.
Right.
And I already said at the beginning, he's a career 5 yards a carry. So if he's, going to rip and do 5 yards a carry, like I think he could have a great year.
Yeah.
And then so lastly, a realistic floor and ceiling that I have for him. I think a realistic floor, obviously this is a situation where it doesn't work out as well as I kind of pictured it to you folks. But I think running back 15 is pretty fair, almost that running back 1, but, not quite there yet. And then ceiling, this is, obviously if they go for Daniel Jones and everything works out and they're giving him more touches and this Indianapolis Colts team turns into a run first, I think he has RB5 upside.
Oh yeah.
I especially with, the thing that kind of blows my mind too is that he's so highly respected as a pass catcher and they don't use him like I thought he got way more work in years prior. Like the year he was the running back 1, he only had 360 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. But, he has shown that he's a guy who can be a reliable, safety valve out of the backfield. And if it's Daniel Jones, I think that would be, getting those dump offs are even more valuable for him in fantasy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If it's Daniel Jones, I think at this point in his career, he's not running as much as he used to. We've seen Jonathan Taylor be very, very useful in the passing game.
Yeah. Wu, who's your last trade for target?
Yeah, this is a guy who has been rising up my boards as of late. I got Jalen Waddle, and he's coming off a down year, one singular down year after 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. I don't think we realize the talent that Waddle has, and I think everybody's kind of putting too much stock into what happened last year.
Can I interject as someone who had Waddle in a fantasy league last year?
Sure.
I think the reason why us as the fantasy community are upset with Waddle is because he's so frustrating to watch. Like he's someone that like you draft and you don't even want to just play, or you just play and you don't watch the game because there's so many times where like he's limping on the field or then he's off the field, then he comes back on and like it's not a consistent play. And I can see the fantasy community just being like, all right, like I'd rather take a guy that I know is going to consistently play and not be on and off the field because he is on, like, he'll be on and off the field and then still give you a good fantasy performance, but it doesn't feel like you got a good performance out of him because it could have been so much more.
I hear that.
So that's how I feel. As someone who had him.
Well, maybe I can help you out a little bit here. So his 2023 season, his best year, he's a wide receiver 7, had 117 targets, only 75 receptions off of those targets. 1,356 yards, so I'm pushing 14.
Yep.
8 touchdowns. So he's the wide receiver 7 that year. Last year was the big down year. He has 1,000 yards and only 14 games played, in what we all consider a brutal season for the Dolphins offense. So he's still pushing out 1,000 yards there. I mean, we know the elite speed and burst. He's got big play potential whenever the ball touches his hands.
Mm-hmm.
He's a home run guy. Really, for me, the big argument for Waddle here is the value, ADP wise. In redraft, he's going at the back of the 5th round, the 512. He's pushing the 6th round there. And then in Dynasty startups, which is the conversation for today, he's 84th off the board in Dynasty startups. He's going behind, I looked at other wide receivers going around him. He's going behind Matthew Golden, Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, Chris Olave, and DJ Moore. And to be honest, I think the only guys I would consider before him is if I'm going to win now with Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
And there might be an argument for DJ Moore because we are high on the Bears this year.
Yes.
But
I was going to say those are probably the only two that I would even consider.
George Pickens is a wide receiver too. Yes, so is Waddle. But I like the physical attributes that he brings to the table compared to Pickens. Yes, Pickens' hands are gross, but the speed for Waddle is the kicker for me.
Oh yeah.
Olave's one more concussion away from having to probably retire.
Yep.
And I'm not even trying to joke with that.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what Matthew Golden's going to do.
I agree. That those are some interesting pieces too. Like hearing the names that he's going around, I feel like is not fair to Waddle.
84th player off the board in a Dynasty startup. He's 26.
Yeah. Like he's someone who we were talking in his rookie year. I believe he set the rookie record for receptions or something like that. And then everyone was like, okay, like
he's rookie year at 104 catches.
Yes, I think that time he broke the record. And then the next year was when Tyreek came in and was like, can he do it again or
and
even build on
did.
that? And he was the wide receiver 7. I think if he can stay healthy, I think he will easily beat out his ADP. Which would be great to see. So what are some trade packages that you would do for Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, I don't know if a first is needed for him here. Like I think this is the lowest his value has been, since joining the NFL. I don't know if you have to give up a first to go get him. I think you could probably get him get him and a pick. Like let's say you're a Devontae Adams owner, or I don't know if Mike Evans will qualify here, but if you have one of those older wide receivers, who still has great value for the next couple seasons, but you're looking to get younger, I think you could give up one of those older vets and get Waddle plus a pick.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it's going to take that much. I'd be very shocked if Waddle managers are as high as I am on him.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that too. I'm scouring keep trade cut, seeing a lot of people trade first round picks for Waddle.
Really?
Yeah, Waddle for 2026 first.
I mean, I haven't done too much, tire kicking, seeing, with the Waddle managers where they're at. But to me, I'd be shocked if they were requiring a first round pick.
Yeah. This was a good one. Would you trade Jamison Williams for a 26 first and Waddle?
Yes.
Yeah.
All day.
I like that one too.
That's right up my alley. That's perfect for what I'm talking about
That's
here.
exactly
like,
what you're looking for.
I do that in a heartbeat. I do it 12 times over.
Yep. So what's a realistic floor and ceiling that you have for Jalen Waddle?
So the big problem with Waddle is he is pretty boom or bust. We've seen this. He's been in the league for 4 years now, and it is something that that's kind of just comes with him. So to be honest, his floor can be outside of the top 30. It is a realistic possibility. And as much as I'm sitting here arguing for him, it is something I have to be honest about. We've seen it enough. The last 2 years he's been the wide receiver 46 and the wide receiver 34, even with those 1,000-yard seasons. So unfortunately, that is his floor due to him being so boom or bust. But his ceiling is top 12 in my opinion.
Oh yeah, easily.
With
the only thing,
we're a year removed from everybody saying the Miami Dolphins have the best offense in the league.
Yes,
1 year removed.
Yes, that's the only thing that scares me though. Is this a trend? Of Miami now starting to go downhill, and my question, not my question, but the other thing too is that if they have another bad year, does Mike McDaniel stay? You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's probably on the hot seat.
And if that gets blown up, then what happens to Waddle after
Right.
then? You know what I mean? Those are just the only like yellow flags that I have going into it. But if Tua can stay healthy, that offense can be, you know, kind of dynamic again as it was 2 years ago. I don't see why Jalen Waddle isn't a great steal.
That's
right
what I'm
there.
saying. I think there's so much value here for him. You know, whether it's drafting him in redraft or if it's a dynasty startup, I just think similar to, you know, the Dak Prescott argument where, you know, we've seen a couple bad years in a row. You know, he's kind of they're pushed towards the back of people's minds. People are looking elsewhere, other, you know, new younger names. I think this would be a great value play for Waddle.
Yeah. I just wanted to give you one bonus trade for candidate right now.
I like it.
The bonus one I'm going to give you, the name is Ben Sinnott, and you're probably like, I have no idea who you're talking about.
Oh, you're about to find out this year?
You are. Ben Sinnott is second-year tight end from Kansas State. He is 6'4", 247. He was actually drafted in the second round last year. Who's the first tight end off the? Oh, he was drafted after Brock Bowers.
Yes,
which is kind of crazy because he's all forgotten about. And it's rightly so because he was behind Zach Ertz all last year. You know, he has nothing meaningful for me to talk about in terms of stats. I think he had a total of 5 targets all year, but caught every single target, so he has a 100% catch rate. But the thing that I want to point out, and it's kind of crazy because it's starting to feel the same as the Trey McBride situation, where Trey McBride also was a second-round pick, as Ben Sinnott, sat behind Zach Ertz the entire year. Cliff Kingsbury was the ran the plays in Arizona. He was the head coach at the time. Now he's the offensive coordinator. But for Ben Sinnott, sat behind Zach Ertz all last year. They re-signed him to a 1-year deal. And if you don't remember about Trey McBride, that year when they re-signed Zach Ertz, I think he played about 10 games, and either there was an injury or they started to phase him out, and then Ben Sinnott started to come into the fray. Trey McBride started to come into the fray and become, you know, the guy we know of him as today. So I'm saying right now, if you're someone who is, you know, needing of a quarterback, wanting to take tight end, needing to take a shot on a tight end, Ben Sinnott might be your guy because he might be a relevant person in this Commanders offense with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, where he could be turn into that safety valve, because last year I don't have Zach Ertz's stats up right now, but I'm pretty sure he had a phenomenal season for the age that he was, so that means that Jaden, relies on his tight ends and is going to go to him. And if Ben Sinnott can beat out Zach Ertz, then, he could be someone who's meaningful for fantasy. And he's someone – sorry, go ahead, Will.
No, you're good. Finish up.
All I was going to say is just in terms of trying to trade for him, he's literally a throw-in piece. Like, you don't even have to, be Ben Sinnott's the main reason why you want to do it. Like all these trades that I was just talking about, for trading for Dak, if you just wanted to throw Ben Sinnott in as like a throw and be like, hey, I'll take Ben Sinnott off your hands. I'm sure someone would do that because they have no idea what they have on their hands.
I forget who has him in our Dynasty Fight Club league, but
it's your boy.
Is this okay? So I'm thinking of a different league because I did try last year, but I think I lowballed way too much, and it wasn't happening. And whoever had him obviously is expecting him to start working in here on this offense. So, last year I was definitely looking at him.
Yeah, last year. Let me see. Last year Terrell had him.
Oh, did you get him?
He dropped him this year.
Oh, so
then I dumped 56 fab in order for him to be on my team. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm curious to see how he pans out. But I'm not going to give you like the whole shebang of ration or what he's going to finish and things like that. I'm just saying just keep the light on for Ben Sinnott.
Yes.
All right. But we're gonna roll into our trade away targets. So because I gave an extra trade for target, I'll kick you. You can start off with our trade aways.
Yeah, first one here is going to be Terry McLaurin, which sucks because I really like him as a player. I love that he stuck it out in Washington. He finally has a massive year. He was a part of this turnaround with the new ownership and Jaden Daniels and, the crazy run that they went on last year going to the conference championship. Like I said, he's coming off a career year. He's a wide receiver 5. A big part of that was his 13 touchdowns that he scored. And we've said it time and time again. We know this isn't a sticky stat. Regression is more than possible for those touchdowns. And I really don't know how much room for improvement there is off of last year. I think it's in the range of outcomes. I think it's more likely for him to regress than progress.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he can finish any higher than that. Obviously, I love Jaden Daniels. I've taken him in a couple startups this year. So obviously I love the future there, but the McLaurin piece, I don't know how much better he can actually get. I think this is a situation where he could be traded. Like, if I had him on my team and I could trade him to a contender, I think I could get a lot of value for him in return because he is a part of this elite offense and being paired with Jaden Daniels. And he's also going to be 30 this year.
Yeah.
Like, he's starting to get to that age where you have to really think, like, all right, so how much time does he have left? And, last year he is wide receiver 5. He had 117 targets, 82 catches, but he barely got over 1,000 yards. He had 1,096 yards with those 13 touchdowns. I think the touchdowns really carried his performance last year.
Yeah, the 13 touchdowns is wild because I think you have his years up, right? What were the other years that he had for touchdowns?
So prior to that 13, the most he had scored was his rookie year, and it was 7.
Yeah, and that was
2019.
2019.
So that from 20 on, he went 4, 5, 5, 4.
Yeah, and then jumps for 13.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's definitely not happening again. And if you have a chance to trade him out, I would definitely cash out now because I think he's in the last year of his deal right now. And it's a toss up. Like, if you're Washington, do you re-sign a 30-year-old wide receiver?
I don't think you can. You have to buy into the fact that you have a 25-year-old Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract.
Right. So, what would you be willing to give away for Terry McLaurin, assuming he was on your roster, Will?
So I have a couple scenarios here. One of them is if I'm mid-season, I'm in a position where I know I'm not making the playoffs. Contenders are looking to spend those picks. I think you can get a crazy amount of picks for him, for that contender that feels like they're a piece away, going for a playoff push, looking for some extra depth in the playoffs. Maybe they like the Washington's matchups. The other scenario, I would take a rookie wide receiver, like maybe one of the Houston guys, Jaden Higgins or Jalen Knoll, or even like Matthew Golden, a second-round pick. You get some draft capital there on top of the potential upside to these guys.
Yeah, just taking a quick scroll for keep trade cut. Would you do Terry McLaurin for a 27 second and the 202 of this year's rookie draft?
For the 202, so that was what, like
202 is probably like Trey Harris or Matthew Golden,
probably
if he was around there.
Yeah. And like probably some of the Houston guys now at this point.
They definitely got pushed up.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they pushed themselves into the first round. I haven't seen any rookie drafts recently, so I don't know what those ADPs look like. But yeah, no, I would do that for sure.
This one's a no-brainer. This is exactly what you were saying. Terry McLaurin for a 26 first round and Jaden Higgins.
Yeah.
That'd be a smash.
If I'm getting a first-round pick and Jaden Higgins, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's just a first straight up, I do.
Yeah, first straight up.
Yes, especially if it's a 26 first, and we're assuming that this is coming from a team who's making a playoff push, so you know it's going to be the back half of the draft. But all the quarterbacks are going to go early, so any of the skill positions that are in this draft are probably going to be towards the end of the first round anyways.
Yeah.
And maybe one of those quarterbacks fall.
That's a good heads up. Like, that's something I wasn't even thinking of. That's a great heads up play. All right, and then lastly, just a realistic floor and ceiling for Terry McLaurin this year.
So I have his floor just outside the top 24 wide receivers, so possibly a fringe wide receiver too. I would have him a lot higher on that, so maybe closer to 30. But I do think that the Washington is going to have a very good offense again. Obviously, love Jaden Daniels and what he's been able to do. Cliff Kingsbury turned that offense around completely. So I think he's not going to finish as low as people are as he has in years past. Like, I don't think the bust potential is as high as it used to be, especially with Jaden Daniels. So I'm going to have him like at the worst, like just outside top 24. I think his ceiling can still be top 10 because, again, I do think Washington's going to have a really good offense. I just think it's more than likely that he's in that 20 to high 20s range than it is for him to be in the top 10 again, because I think he's going to have to score a bunch of touchdowns to do it.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I like that. So I'm going to give you my first straightaway candidate. My first one's going to be James Cook, running back of the Buffalo Bills. Listen, I'm sure every James Cook manager is jumping for joy that he showed up to mandatory minicamp. But I want to make the case right here that it is mandatory. If he didn't go, he wasn't making any money, and he was going to get fined. And I think he's a third round pick, so his rookie contract isn't crazy. So, I think he needs every penny that he needs. I think when we get into training camp time, I think it's going to be a lot more, contested in terms of his contract. I think, I think we're going to see a hold in where like he's going to show up so he doesn't get fined, but I don't think he's going to participate in training camp. And that right there spells a recipe for disaster, because I can't even think of the last time a running back has either held in or held out and missed a portion of training camp and then did well that year in the fantasy season, and then to talk about, his past performance last year, he had 18 total touchdowns, and that accounted for 43% of his fantasy production. If we're talking 2 years ago, because I think 2 years ago, I think he only had 2 or 3 total touchdowns. You apply that to what he had last year, like he's fallen off the face of the planet in terms of, his fantasy finish. So those pieces right there are reasons why I would want to trade him away. I think what it would take to get rid of him, I think if you wanted to, cash out on him, off the great season, and someone wasn't aware of the contract dispute and, his fantasy finish, if you wanted to trade like a young running back, like RJ Harvey or Cam Scatterbo and that and a 26 second, I think would be great. I think this one would be very tough, but if you wanted to try to trade him for a 26 first, you just have to ensure that it's a late one.
Right.
But those would be some things I'd be willing to trade to get rid of James Cook.
I think one of the big things for me for Cook, it has to do with the touchdowns. I do expect him to still have opportunities to score that many because the Bills are a very good offense.
Sure.
They're going to be in the red zone. My biggest thing is when they're like inside the 5 or even on the goal line, sure, he is an option for them to hand the ball off to him and have those touchdowns. But because of what Josh Allen can do around the goal line and those QB sneaks,
right?
Sure, he could still be in a position to score there. But Josh Allen is just as likely to do so. So I think even if he does have those opportunities, there's still a good chance that he's still not scoring them.
Right. I was just looking last year to see how many, like when they were in the red zone, he had only 3 red zone touchdowns, you know what I mean, to Josh Allen's.
There you go.
He had 7. No. Yeah. He had 7, or no, he had more because Josh Allen had 7. Oh no, those are rushing. No, 7, 18. He had 18 rushing touchdowns inside the red zone. So like, I could totally see them bouncing the way of.
That's what I mean.
His way.
So that means James Cook has to score from pretty much outside the 20.
Correct.
And he's not like a big breakaway speed kind of guy.
No, he's
just
only.
On his build.
I have his right up here. He's 5'11", 190. So it's not like he's like a 200-pound running back that's gonna bust through the line. But just to round it out, realistic floor and ceiling that I have for James Cook, I think a floor for him is running back 18. He's definitely still going to be relevant. I agree with you, in that RB2 range. And then I think his ceiling, I still don't think he can get to an RB1 range. I think running back 14 is the ceiling that I would put for him.
Yeah, I'm in on that.
Yeah. Who is your last trade away candidate?
My last one, again, a guy that I like, but I just have to be realistic here. It's Baker Mayfield. And to be honest, my argument is very similar to Terry McLaurin. Baker's coming off a career year. He was the QB3 last year. And again, I just don't know where the room for improvement is. I don't see him so last year he had, I want to say it was 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns. Like, that's a hell of a season. There's a lot of quarterbacks who would kill to have a season like that. And I just don't see him getting close to like 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns again. And that's where that improvement would be. Mm-hmm. And really, the only argument I can hear in order for him to actually improve on this value is if he continues running the way he did last year, but more. Like, so last year he had
Let's say it was like 350 or
It
somewhere
was
around
378 rushing yards, which is triple any other year that he had. And in order for him to actually improve, like I think he would have to be close to like 600. Like he would have to probably double that number.
Yeah.
So to throw for 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and then double the rushing, like that doesn't seem very realistic to me.
Do we think he could maintain though? Do you think, obviously Cohen is gone, but they did add Emeka Egbuka, the first round wide receiver from Ohio State. Like could he maintain that 4,000 yards? 40 touchdowns is a lot to ask for, but could it be 35, you know what I mean, somewhere in mid to high 30s that still kind of keeps him relevant?
I mean, he's only thrown for 4,000 yards twice, and it's both been with Tampa Bay, so I guess that's a valid argument there. But he's only done it twice, and so last year he was the quarterback 3. First year in Tampa, he was the quarterback 10. Prior to that, he was 29, 25, 17, 19, 16. So it's like, is it the situation in Tampa? Maybe. In order for him to, for me to want to keep him, yes, he would have to maintain or improve. I just feel like it's more possible for him to regress and move back than it is for him to stay where he is.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of value for him, I think in Superflex League you could easily get a first round pick for him. To be honest, I would try to squeeze as much draft capital out of him as possible. I don't even know if it's a scenario where I'm wanting players back. Because he's a quarterback, and in Superflex leagues, how valuable those can be, and if this person that you're trading with, has that intuition that he's going to continue to maintain where he's at or even get better, I think they'd be willing to ship out a lot of picks, and I would be all in on that. In terms of his floor and ceiling, for the floor, I have QB 18, and I think it's because there's a lot of names that. CJ Stroud had a bad year last year. We're still waiting to see what Trevor Lawrence can do, and now he has all the pieces on offense. Jordan Love has kind of been flirting with that QB1, but it hasn't quite hit yet. Bryce Young had a great end to the year last year. He could be an improved quarterback. Geno Smith's in a great situation with Vegas and some more, with Brock Bowers. That's a great pairing.
Yep.
Sam Darnold last year, had a great year, obviously. Now he's in Seattle. It's a different scenario. I don't expect him to be better, but it's still a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I just think there's a lot of names that finished behind Baker last year that are in a position to improve. Caleb Williams is another one. I think there's a lot of names that could move up this list as Baker moves back.
Yeah, I agree with that. 'Cause at that point, you're just taking the field. I'm going to bet on the field.
Yes.
Finishing better than Baker Mayfield.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I'm
himself.
betting on the field here.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think we talked about this at the beginning. When we started this podcast and we did our year in review series. I think that that was probably the peak Baker Mayfield. Now the question is, can he stay around it or not lose it? But I think improving is something that's probably out of the question for him.
And for ceiling, I still have him top 8 because of the reasons you just said. They have all the weapons. They bring in Egbuka. His best years have come in Tampa Bay. He still has Mike Evans. Chris Godwin will be back at some point. The running game proved to be pretty elite last year, so that'll help with the passing game. There's still very valid reasons for him to be a top 10 quarterback. I just think there's too many reasons for him not to be. But I do still have a ceiling as top 8.
Yeah, I like that one. My last trade away candidate I have for you is George Kittle. Listen, I think George Kittle is going to smash this year, and I think that is the reason why you want to trade him away now. I would rather be out early on a player and get a return for someone who values him as I think right now he's going as the tight end 3 behind McBride and Bowers. I would rather trade him away now than wait a year and he's another year older and he's not as athletic as he is now, and then I don't get as much value. You know what I mean? He's going to be playing at 32 years old. There's nothing that for this current year, like in redraft, I would totally take George Kittle as the tight end 3. But in the lens of Dynasty, I think this is the time where you want to get out on him now. Go to a team that is potentially competing for a championship that doesn't have a tight end, and you ask for a king's ransom for George Kittle, and you stand on your laurels of he's still George Kittle, and when he plays a full season, he's absolutely monstrous. I think. Do I have it up? I do. Last 4 years he was the tight end 4, 3, 5, 2. You know what I mean? Like, that's awesome. Like, he's always been that next tier of tight end after like the top, like the years of like Travis Kelce and Mark Andrew. Like, he was that next tier. Last year was the first time, or, except for, within the first 3 years of his career, where he was, considered that like elite echelon guy. Like, he finishes the tight end 2 in some league formats. I think you take that and then tell whoever you're trying to trade for that, listen, Brock Purdy got his deal. Brandon Ayuk is probably not going to be there to start the season. And you think that they're going to rely on a young Ricky Pearsall and an older Juwan Jennings. I think George Kittle will be the engine that kind of moves that offense and gets them down the field, especially if Christian McCaffrey's hurt. Like, you saw that last year, where the reason why he was the tight end 2 is because McCaffrey was hurt, Ayuk was hurt, and they couldn't trust anyone else in the receiving game. So it was only George Kittle and getting them to move down the field.
I think there's value for him in, standard, PPR leagues. But then if you're in a tight end premium league,
oh my God,
and you can trade him away, your biggest argument is you're getting a top 3 tight end for, I would say, probably 2, maybe 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it being the tight end premium scoring, it's a positional advantage every week over your opponent. Like, I think you can get a ton of value for him in the tight end premium format.
Yeah. Like this one right here. Like, if I don't know if I would do this one, but I'll read it anyways. George Kittle and a 27th first and a 26th first for Trey McBride.
Wow.
That is a lot.
It is Trey McBride.
It is Trey McBride, exactly. Trying to see another good one. This one I would do. AJ Brown and George Kittle for Rashee Rice and Sam Laporta. You take two older guys, and you get younger in both those positions.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, trading for, it's going to be hard to get a first-round pick for George Kittle. I mean, depends on the team. Like, if the manager is, like, hungry for that tight end, maybe you could squeak out a first-round pick. But I don't think that should be your expectation.
Right.
This last one I would do, too. George Kittle and a 26th second for Emeka Egbuka and 26th first-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
That's an awesome deal to do. So then when we're talking about his ceiling and floor, I think, and this is like if things were not as good as it was last year, I think his floor is tight end 5, which is not bad. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting a top 5
We've
tight
talked
end.
about the history of tight ends over
Correct.
the last 2 seasons, and yeah, top 5 is very good. But when you look at, what the rest of the list looks like, then it's not as impressive as you think.
Correct. I agree with that.
Because wasn't Kelce the tight end 5 last year?
Yes, 6, I think somewhere around there.
In that range.
Yeah, and it wasn't that good. And that's assuming that, Pearsall becomes a prominent target in that offense. Then when Ayuk comes back healthy or comes back from his injury, he is healthy, and the same Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey is 100% healthy and not missing time. I think if those things went the wrong way for Kittle, I think that's where you see him as the tight end 5. But I think realistically, and his ceiling, I think, is the tight end 3. I think he's still not good enough to beat out McBride and Bowers. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but I think ceiling wise, I think he is like standing alone in that tight end 3. Like, I think the top tier of like Bowers and McBride, they're definitely going to fight it out for the first tight end 1 slot, but I think there's nobody really that challenges George Kittle for the tight end 3.
Maybe like Laporta.
Maybe, and even then there's still some questions.
The situation for Kittle is definitely better.
Right, exactly, because it's not as murky as the Laporta situation. So those were my potential floors and ceilings for George Kittle.
I'm with that.
But ladies and gentlemen, we've hit the end of this episode. We appreciate you listening, watching, like you have been. If you haven't already, please make sure you're following us on our socials: Twitter at 4th and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at 4th and Fantasy, YouTube. Make sure you're searching us at 4th and Fantasy if you like to watch a video format like you are seeing today. That was it. After Wu doing that mock draft episode, this feels like it was like light and quick, right? and easy.
I felt like it was rolling off the tongue.
Right. But we're going to be coming with more content as the summer rolls on. Obviously, things are going to pick up more and more as the, fantasy football season approaches, when training camp and things like that. So if you're looking for all the information, fantasy football, dynasty football related, make sure you're tuning into this podcast. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the other side.
See ya.